Thanks to Swedish Comica for becoming a channel member. Well, the Championship is back to full service this weekend after the FA Cup break for some teams last time out. We are back with matchday 30 predictions across Friday, Saturday and Sunday. We're going to run through all 12 games, give you our preview, our predictions and the reasons we've gone for each team. And of course, as always, we'll encourage you to do the same in the comments below. So give us your score predictions for matchday 30, and if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be this time next week, looking ahead to another full weekend. A quick caveat to say that we're recording this midway through transfer deadline day, so can't take all of the late signings into account. But either way, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of loan deals going about, and there are a few clubs being muted with certain signings, so we'll see what happens as the day goes on. For now though, before we go and move on to this weekend, let's have a look back at that fragmented match date from last week. We had 7 games spread over 8 days, and I managed to pick up 5 points. It was a bit of a frustrating one in the end. 1 goal out on a couple, lost out on a point in the Huddersfield game in the 95th minute, which ultimately cost Darren Moore his job. And Sheffield Wednesday, well, they huffed and they puffed, but they couldn't knock the door down when it came to Watford on Wednesday night. I did get a perfect score for the Leicester Swansea game though, as well as a correct draw prediction for Coventry Bristol City and a correct outcome for Leeds beating Norwich. That meant I got 5, but there are a number of you who beat me, and I'm having to refer to paper notes this week, so bear with me. I've professionally put it on a post-it this time. So level on me, 3 of you, Steve, Lennon and Daniel, you all got 5 as well, so well done to you. Each of you picking up 1 perfect score. And then BPK, W&G, Simon and Tio all on 6 points, just 1 above me. And if it hadn't been for QPR's late equaliser against Huddersfield, I would have been in the top 3 this week, which is very annoying. There is one standout winner though, on 8 points, one of our most regular players, Chris. Well done to you. 2 perfect scores, 2 other correct outcomes. A brilliant effort overall. So well done to you for winning the match day with 8. For now though, we have got to return to matchday 30 and a full fixture list this weekend. We begin with Friday night football as Bristol City host Leeds United. Leeds, a side that at times have been frustrated away from home this year. They were also frustrated in the FA Cup last week at home to Plymouth, but prior to that, it had been a perfect start to 2024 with 5 successive wins in all competitions. And to be fair, in that Plymouth game, they played them off the park. So while it is about taking chances at times, you've got to say that overall there's not too much to worry about, and great to see Jadon Anthony score given the circumstances and the recent time he's had. For Bristol City, an unbeaten run of different sorts, 4 without defeat but 3 draws in a row, including 2 in a championship. And to be fair, away at Coventry City, not a bad result at all, and for a moment it looked like they were going to win it. But no matter who the manager is and what the circumstances, Bristol City and conceding late goals, they just seem to marry together so well. And unfortunately, they couldn't hang on for what would have been, well, a brilliant point that would have put them right back in the playoff mix. So for this game, I think it's going to be fairly tight. If we take away Bristol City in midweek, let's be honest, there's not been many goals in their games. It's been 0-0, 1-0 or a goal either way. Leeds have not been conceding many at all. 1 in their last 4 championship matches. I'm going to go for Leeds to nick it, and I'm going to go for the clean sheet. There's never many goals in those Friday night games, so I'm going to go 1-0 to the visitors. A big win for Leeds. Let's move on to the 10 Saturday games, and the first 2 are huge games at the bottom end of the table. First up is Blackburn Rovers versus QPR. QPR, 4 points from their last 2 home games, and while I guess in the circumstances they will have taken a draw against Huddersfield after conceding in the 86th minute, the performance wasn't particularly inspiring. Yes, they had more of the ball, they kept it relatively well, but it's not going to get them anywhere. It's a real concern that they've not really got a big goal threat. Those patterns of plays aren't leading to chances. And at the moment, it does look like missed opportunities for QPR, especially now that Huddersfield have gone for a change of manager. On the flip side of that, Blackburn actually produced a really good performance at home to Wrexham in the Cup. That after themselves drawing 1-1 with Huddersfield. But overall, it's been a really rocky couple of months for Rovers. And to be honest, John Dale Thomason looks like he's losing more stars. Adam Wharton's off to Palace. There's real strong links today at the moment at this time of recording with my club Luton Town maybe going for Tyree Stolen. I'm not sure whether that gets done, to be honest. But Blackburn are drifting. They're only 8 points clear of that relegation zone now. They've overtaken Rotherham with the worst defence in the league, 53 conceded. And after losing stars, as we mentioned last summer, who are doing well in the Premier League now, there is a real cause for concern at Blackburn because they're getting edged out to signings by clubs below them. And it looks like they're going to be in for a scrap towards the end of this year. So I do feel for Thomason a bit, but in this game, it's an absolutely huge one for them. They have got a goal threat, and at the moment, they've still got Sammy Szmodic. So I'm going to go for them just purely on goal threat to get the better of QPR this time. We know that both sides are susceptible at the back. We know Blackburn have got a bigger goal threat on paper. So I'm going to go for that to win the day. I'm going to go Blackburn by 2-1. And the other big game at the bottom is currently managerless Huddersfield Town against Danny Roll's Sheffield Wednesday. Really concerned watching Roll's post-match press conference the other day because they were brilliant against Watford and all that was missing was the goal. He didn't look happy after. He looked like, well, so many managers look after a few months under Chansiri. And I would be worried that the first time a job comes up, maybe a Blackburn in a month or two, that Danny Roll might want to go because he did not look like a man content. As it is, they've actually been okay in recent weeks. And yes, they got that draw against Coventry in the Cup, which doesn't really help either. But a 0-0 against Watford, not a disaster. But again, a missed opportunity. They could have been level on points with QPR here. Huddersfield, 3 successive 1-1 draws. I'm a little bit surprised Darren Moore's been sacked. And I go back to what we've said with a couple before. If you're going to sack a manager or change manager because you want to change the style in the future, you've got to be patient because Huddersfield had just got through a spell where they had loads of players out injured, didn't have a bench full most weeks, didn't have a championship attacking line. Now they're just starting to get it back. They were the better team against QPR without getting a win. And they've got a couple of signings in who are starting to look good. So I was very surprised to see him sacked at this point. Albeit the results overall haven't been good enough, but the timing just seemed a bit off for me, particularly 1 or 2 days before deadline day. But for this game, I really don't know what to go for. I'm going to say if Darren Moore was in charge, I would have gone for a 1-1 draw. As it is, I'm going to stick my neck on the line and change it here. I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to get that striker in later today and to maybe nick it by 1-0 on Saturday afternoon. That would shake up the relegation battle. Let's move on to Hull City versus Millwall. I was very interested to see Ryan Giles rock up at Hull City this week, having signed for Luton in the summer. They got a 1-0 win away at Sunderland a couple of weeks ago. Of course, we're not in FA Cup action last weekend. And Fabio Carvalho became an instant hero, as Hull City, on paper, appeared to have had one hell of a summer. They were disciplined defensively, they won a game in a different way, and it's just what they needed after a bit of a sticky spell. Similar for Millwall, really. They got a point against Preston last week. It wasn't a great performance, and we know how much Preston can frustrate teams. They did actually end up having a couple of good chances on the break, but Millwall, they kept the ball well. They created opportunities. It was an improvement on recent performances. So I think this will be another tight one, but on paper, even though they've been in poor form, I've got to go for the home side. I'm going for Hull to nick it by 2-1. Next up is a game that I have, well, changed my mind 2 or 3 times on. It's Norwich City versus Coventry City. One side in the playoffs versus one side chasing it. And if Norwich win this one, it would go level on points with their visitors. Both sides had been in pretty good form at the start of the year. Coventry just had 2 draws now in Cup and League in the last week. And of course, we've got to bear in mind the impact of an extra midweek game too. Whereas for Norwich, it has been, well, a difficult day at Anfield, after a difficult day at Leeds. But these are 2 games that you're not expected to win away from home. Home comforts, as we saw against West Brom, they have got quality. Adam Idar looks like he's on his way to Celtic, but with Sargent coming back with a few others in fitness and form again, I think Norwich are in better shape. I can see this being 2-1 either way, and I was just really convinced it's not going to be a draw. So I've had to take a gamble one way or the other. Coventry have been unbeaten longer. They've shown a real goal threat in recent weeks. After that slow start, they're scoring 2 or more in most games now. In the last 4 championship games, it's been 3-3, 2-2, all against pretty decent opposition. So I'm going to go for the Coventry to come out on top by 2-1. I think this will be a really tight game, and it wouldn't shock me if it was the other way round. But I'm going to stick my neck on the line and go for Coventry to pip it. Let's move on to a side that were victims of the biggest FA Cup shock last weekend. It is Ipswich Town who visit Preston North End. Preston did what they do. They were defensive, they were cautious away at Millwall, and they gritted their way to a 1-1 draw. Another point on the board, they just about keep themselves in the mix. But again, while they had a couple of great chances on the break, it wasn't the most inspiring display. For Ipswich, my word, I don't know how they lost it because they had enough chances to win about 10 games, but it was a big FA Cup shock. They gave up a couple of good chances to Maidstone, and my word, for purists who love the FA Cup, what a day it was. Hopefully for Ipswich, it is a minor blip because they've been brilliant this season and they've got themselves in amongst 3 elite relegated sides in a battle for promotion. So you like to see them do well. You'd like to see them stay up there just to make that race really exciting. And I'm not sure it's going to derail them too much. They've been in decent form this season prior. I think it makes Kieran McKenna's job easier when he picks his 11 at full strength again this week. And I'm going to go for Ipswich to win comfortably. Preston are going to play like an away team. They're going to try and play to hit on the break. While Ipswich at times are susceptible, on the road they're a little bit more miserly. So I'm going to go for them to win by 2-0. As we move into the second half, it is bottom versus third as Rotherham United host Southampton. Rotherham, bottom of the table and edging towards last chance Aluniya feel. 9 points adrift of safety, not won in their last 5 games in all competitions. And a 1-1 draw away at Middlesbrough, a great result. But again, it was one of those where the host didn't take their chances. And if they had, it might have been a very different outcome. So we know that Rotherham are going to need to do better. And they're coming up against a side that are 22 unbeaten. I was actually in the away end for Southampton's cup tie at Watford, where they did look very disjointed in the first half with the changes. But as soon as they brought the 3 or 4 stars on in the second half, they absolutely wiped the floor with Watford. And in the end, probably should have gone and won it. Some excitement there. They've got tricky wingers who can carry the ball, but they're also good in possession too. And while we have seen them be frustrated once by Rotherham this year, I do think it'll be a different story because Southampton are adapting a little bit and adding that threat out wide on the break. So for me, Southampton to win pretty comfortably and Rotherham to lose at home in this one by 3-1. Let's move on to the leaders. It is Leicester City who travel to Stoke City. They won 3-1 last time out against Swansea. Not that you would know it from the reaction in the stadium after. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall still at the club, opening the scoring early. But the Leicester fans are liking it very similarly. And it's a bit of a niche comparison, but Hearts in the Scottish Championship a couple of years ago. They went down in the COVID year. Massive side in the second tier of Scottish football. And they were winning 1 or 2-0 every week. They were doing what they needed to do. But the fans were expecting more. And I kind of feel we're getting to that stage with Leicester. Let's be honest here. They're going to come up. Maresca's doing a brilliant job. And next season we'll probably see a slightly different side to them. Albeit you may have said that about Burnley last year. So I'm not too worried about the performances. I would be just saying, get me up and out of this league as quick as possible. Yes, they gave up a few chances to Swansea. They weren't quite as miserly at the back as they have been. But they were ruthless in attack. They took their chances. And they've won again. I mean, you can't fault them really. For Stoke, a very frustrating day against Sunderland. Because again, on paper, they probably had the better of the game. They created a lot of openings, albeit often made the wrong decisions, trying to get crosses in from acute areas or going from distance rather than trying to create an opening. In the end, both sides had a couple of great chances, but Sunderland produced the moments of quality, and Stoke, as a result of that, ended up 3-0 down with 20 to go, which was incredibly harsh on the balance of the game. But they've got to start finding a way to score goals because it's been an Achilles heel all season. It's been a massive problem still since Steven Schumacher came in, and now that defensive solidity is starting to wear away, we're starting to see the worries of the old Stoke again. And bear in mind, they're 19th. They're 7 points above the dotted line. It's not a time they can really afford to drop more points. This game is going to be a tough ask anyway. We know Leicester's favourite score on the road was 2-1 at the start of the year. I'm going to go for that again in this one. I just think Stoke will probably give them a good game. It'll be a balanced and pretty even match. But Leicester will be more ruthless and they'll take an extra chance. Let's move on to another big game in the bottom half. It is Swansea versus Plymouth Argyle. Plymouth yet to win an away game this season, but up in 15th place and 8 clear of the relegation zone. They picked up a draw at Leeds in the cup, but overall, 5 unbeaten in all competitions now. A big win at home against Cardiff for Ian Foster last time out. And there are signs that they're a little bit better at times defensively, or certainly willing to be a bit more patient and a bit more disciplined. For Swansea, it's been a very difficult run. Southampton, Bournemouth and Leicester back-to-back. I watched the Bournemouth game on TV and they were carved to shreds, but Luke Williams kind of admitted he set up wrong there. But we mentioned this when he came into the job a few weeks ago. His first 8 games were basically against all of the top 7, plus a home game against Plymouth. And this makes this game incredibly important. This is the one that they look in this spell and say, yeah, we've got to win. But it's easier said than done when you've had 3 defeats in a row. And we did say it, if they don't win this game and then they struggle against the rest of the top sides, before you know it, they'll be looking over their shoulder at a 2, 3, 4 point gap rather than an 8-point one. So I feel it's imperative Swansea don't lose this game and ideally try and get a win. Plymouth away from home generally don't win, but I feel there's going to be nerves on both sides, and Plymouth have improved offensively on the road. Despite that, I'm going to go for goals, and I can't split them. I'm going to go for a draw. Swansea City 2, Plymouth Argyle 2. The penultimate game on Saturday is Watford versus Cardiff City. I did watch Watford, as I said, last Sunday against Southampton in the Cup. They were pretty good in the first half against a weakened Southampton team. When Southampton brought their first 11 on, they looked poor. And they've got this tendency to try and defend the lead rather than to keep pushing on. Against Sheffield Wednesday midweek, they were, I think you'd say, fairly fortunate to get a draw. Sheffield Wednesday were definitely in the ascendancy and try and get the result. But away from home, Watford get the point. They did create a great chance of their own in the end. And they stay within 3 points of the playoffs. So you can't really criticise Valérien Ismaël because they're showing a fight that they haven't done in previous seasons, certainly in the last one. And it does continue the unbeaten run, albeit with far too many draws to consider promotion. Cardiff, though, have lost 3 in a row. They've let in 10 goals across those games against Wednesday in the Cup, against Leeds and against Plymouth. And we've mentioned it for a few weeks now. They are falling off a cliff. And it's probably lucky they had such a good start because I could see them being in trouble if not, as we predicted at the start of the year. It's a big couple of weeks coming up for them now. Away at Watford, a game where they might think we can get a result out of. They're going to have to push to try and get a draw or something because they need to stop the rot. I'm not sure they're going to in this one. It's going to be a tough game. But I fancy Watford to nick it. And I'm going to go for the host by 2-0. And the final game on Saturday is a West Midlands derby. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Birmingham City. Probably not quite as fiery as the game was last week, I would imagine. Not the best scenes that we saw in that one. However, West Brom did succumb to a 2-0 defeat to Wolves in the FA Cup in the end, and that followed a disappointing day at Norwich, where they were pretty poor defensively too. For Birmingham, it was a really weird performance in the Cup, wasn't it? Because the first half against Leicester, they were phenomenal. They hit them on the counter, they created chances, and they probably should have been ahead. In the end, though, in the second half, Leicester were ruthless. They took every chance against them, and Birmingham City are now out of the Cup. Not that I'm sure Mowbray will mind that at this point. They're another side in 20th that need to pick up points because of that disastrous spell under Rooney. Of course, he's picked up 4 in the last 2 championship games, but he's going to need to try and add to that then. I mean, it's a fun fact, isn't it? It was John Eustace's last game, the home game against West Brom in the reverse fixture. A comfortable home win for Birmingham, and he still got sacked straight after. This game, do you know what? I've got a feeling, because West Brom don't like coming out, and I think Birmingham are going to force that. They'll play at speed on the counter. We know what Tony Mowbray's sides do. I've just got a funny feeling Birmingham are going to nick it. I'm going to go for my weird result of the weekend. Despite me thinking West Brom will make the playoffs, despite the fact they've been great at home in recent months, I'm going to go for Birmingham by 2-1 and risk looking very stupid this weekend. And the final game is on Sunday lunchtime, and I know we keep getting criticism here for calling this a derby or a local game, but you need to tell Sky Sports because they keep picking it for TV and billing it as a North East derby. It is Middlesbrough versus Sunderland. Borough have lost Morgan Rogers to Aston Villa at the time of recording. There are other links at the moment as well. Sunderland have made 1 addition on the morning of deadline day, and both sides are in a pretty similar position chasing the playoffs. Borough are just starting to get a few players back. Of course, they really struggled in that second leg of the Carabao Cup. Against Rotherham, they were hampered a bit because they didn't take chances and they were without key players. And the loss of Isaiah Jones in that game was a massive blow. For Sunderland, I mentioned it already. I don't want to get too excited about the result and say everything's fixed under Beale because Stoke were the better side in that game for a large part of it. Sunderland took their chances. They were good on the counter at times, but again, not the best defensively. They could have given up goals there. But you've got to be fair and say it's a big 3 points and it gets them right back in the playoff mix. So, after 3 defeats in a row, they responded. They got a result by any which means, and that was important for Mick Beale. But if the performance isn't good this weekend in this game, and they do get beaten comfortably, it'll put him back to square one. So it's really important that they put together 2 or 3 games in a row, something they've not yet done under their new manager. For this game, I do feel Borough will improve before the end of the day, with players back from injury and 1 or 2 surely coming into the club. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to win it. I wasn't convinced by Sunderland last weekend. Borough have had a crucial week and a half off. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to win, and I'm going to go comfortably to finish by 3-1. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in matchday 30. I've gone for 2 teams to score 3, with Southampton away at Rotherham and Middlesbrough at home to Sunderland on Sunday lunchtime. Big results at the bottom for the likes of Sheffield Wednesday, for Birmingham City away at West Brom, probably my shock of the weekend, and a goals galore draw between Swansea and Plymouth to make things exciting in the bottom half. But those are just my predictions for matchday 30. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below and give me your predictions for this weekend's action. If you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap, which will be live again at this time next week. In the meantime, though, we'll be back tomorrow with a Premier League preview for the weekend. You can get your predictions in that one as well, as Luton try to back up a stunning performance away from home at Newcastle. If you enjoyed this episode, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe to stay up to date with everything else. You can find our League One Shorts predictions up in the eye above, and you can join me on the Football Manager channel and Twitch for plenty more football chat. But thank you very much for watching and being here as always, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for our weekend Premier League preview.